So, in a sense, it's not really a reason to rush today. It's a very short ace today. But on the other hand, maybe that means that we can, wax poetic about different concepts that it says in the ace, which is not something we usually get to do, because usually an ace takes up pretty neatly half an hour, 25 minutes, whatever it ends up being. So, let's go. First, we'll start with the kitzur of yesterday's ace, and then we'll just move right in. So, go for Adam. I'll read it in English, but the body of a person and everything that's made out of is a vessel for receiving the soul of a person. This is what we explained yesterday, that the previously on, the body of a person is made to receive the soul of a person. And because of this, the body is nullified to the soul of the person, because it's like when you're wearing like a glove or something like that. It fits like a glove. You're able to move around your hand, and the glove just conforms to what the hand does. Same thing with the body. The body is a receptacle for the soul of a person, and because of that, it's nullified to the soul. Go for behema, the body of an animal is not a receptacle for the soul of a person, and that's why when if a person gets reincarnated into an animal, the animal just goes around the body of the animal, does what the body of the animal does, and the soul of the person isn't able to do anything. It's very uncomfortable. So we said this is similar to kedusha, holiness. Things that are holy are vessels for godliness, and the light of God is able to shine in them in a revealed way. But things which are on the other side of holiness, they consider themselves to be an entity that is distinct from godliness, and they deny the existence of, or they deny the unity of God, because they're considering themselves to be an existence. Now,
do animals have sitra hara and also the sitra top?
Things don't. As in, like, living entities we don't usually say that they have these things. Usually, we say that things could be sourced in one side or another side. Different animals have different aspects to them. As in, like, let's say, I don't know, a lion. There's a lot of positive traits you could learn from a lion. We say that the spiritual source of a lion is very lofty.
David HaMelech was like a lion as well.
Yehuda is compared to a lion. However, lions are not kosher. You're not allowed to eat a lion. So different things have different aspects and different sides to them. We're going to discuss this a little bit now. So I have to catch myself at the end from saying that Sitra Achra denies godliness. Sitra Achra doesn't deny godliness. They are kafir, and you can give me diak and the Rebbe's lashon. They're kafir. They deny the unity of God, because they're not saying that God doesn't exist. They're saying that God exists. God is all powerful, but I'm myself. I exist unto myself, and God is definitely more powerful than me. He's my God, He created me, etc., etc. But they say that they exist distinctly, and that there's not a complete unity in God. So let's go in. This is what we're going to be going in. This is what we're going to be discussing now, actually. So as it is with Sitra Achra, the other side, which is the source of impurity. Well, what Sitra Achra is very nuanced and complicated, and honestly, I don't pretend to fully understand. There's a question that I had, and I looked it up, and it turns out the Rebbe has the same question. He says he doesn't know the answer. The Rebbe doesn't know. We always say that there's 3 klippos of impurity. Why 3? What's the notion of the 3 in the klippos? And in Tanya, one of the earlier prakim, maybe it was like Parak Zayin or something like that. I forgot exactly which parak though, but the Rebbe has notes in Tanya, and the Rebbe says we always say 3. And I've looked, and I haven't found the source for why it's 3. The Rebbe gives a suggestion, what the Rebbe's suggestion is what we're going to.
But he knows what are the 3. He just doesn't know why it's 3.
No, it's not that we just always say there's 3 klippos. The shalish klippos of Tamei is 3 impure klippos, 3 impure shells.
But what are they?
They're the impure shells. Well, what a klippa is, we know what a klippa is. It's something that conceals over godliness. It's like the shell to a fruit. In a sense, it helps protect the fruit, but on the other hand, it also makes the fruit harder to get to. If it's a nut, it's a harder shell to crack, etc., etc. But what the notion of 3 shells are, we know that there's scriptural sources for the 3 shells. It's in Meister Merkava in the beginning of Yecheskel. What the 3 klippas are, the Rebbe posits different reasons like why we say that there's 3 klippos, but the Rebbe says this is what it is.
The Alter Rebbe doesn't comment on it in Tanya?
No. The Rebbe said that he hasn't found an explanation. While the Rebbe might know what it is, but by the way, it's very possible the Rebbe knows what it is, but he just hasn't found anything written in his source. In Chassidus, in Chabad Chassidus especially, I don't know how it works in other Chassidusin, but the Rabbeim will do their utmost to not say anything that isn't sourced in the writings of one of the previous Rebbeim. There's a story, something that I heard, I heard it from a teacher that I trust, there's no reason for him to make it up, but that the Friedrich Rebbe wrote an entire treatise on, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, like a passage, like a book on a subject, a treatise, I'm not sure.
Treaties is like usually an agreement between countries.
No, I'm saying, I forgot the word, let's just say like a whole thesis, or whatever it is, on the way that will functions, the nature of will, how it is, and it was called Yad Yosef. It had 14 parts, and his name was Yosef, and Yad Yosef, Yad is Vikamash Yudalad, and he had this whole treatise, and he burnt it, because he said he wasn't able to fully source it in the things that his father wrote or said. And at a later point in his life, he said that he regretted burning it, because ultimately he was able to find the source for everything that he wrote in there in what his father wrote or said. But in general, this is why the Rebbeim were so into the Ksavim, the writings. We had Hey Tevis less than a month ago, still fresh. Hey Tevis, one of the main things is the Ksavim are the essence, in a sense, the essence of Chabad Chassidus. They're undeniable fact. As Chassidim, we would look at it as al derech, like Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. Or like a nevuah. You have Torah Shebachsav. Torah Shebachsav is that a Navi came and said something. This is already going on a tangent, but we have some time. It's important to be able to embellish the concept. But we have a lot of nevuahs that are recorded in Nach. And we say that the Torah Shebachsav, how do they get off being called Torah Shebachsav? As in, obviously, it's something that the Chachamim came up with at a certain point, that these are Torah Shebachsav. But you get schar for learning Torah Shebachsav even if you don't understand it. If a person just reads Tehillim or reads, I don't know, Iv or whatever it is, he still gets schar for reading it. Why is it different than anything else? Why is it different than, I don't know, Sefer Yitzirah, supposedly a collection of brises from Avraham Avinu, which is, very early stuff. But that you don't get schar for reading it, for just reading it. You need to understand it. Why is it that Tanakh is different? And in a sense, because these things are things that you could read into just because they are just divinely sourced in that way. What's recorded in the Mishnah and the Brisa and the Gemara, whatever it is, all of these things, what's important about them is not the words, but they're the ideas. But in Chabad Chassidus, we say it's similar to this, that the words themselves, the writings themselves, are things which are to be cherished, that you can keep on pulling out of them. It's not just the ideas that they represent at a face value, but it's the words themselves are holy. So we very much care about the Ksavim. That's the Rebbe Rashab said when he passed away. He said, I'm going to heaven, but the writings, I'm leading to you. Which is, in a sense, he's giving himself over. Not to make too many parallels that would make people uncomfortable if they're not Chassidim, but you could say almost that the same way that Hashem said when he gave the Seres HaDibros, he gave the Luchos, he said, Anon Nafshik Savas Yahavis, Anechi it's in Yaakov or something like that. Anechi is Rashi Tevis. And then the first word of the Seres HaDibros is Rashi Tevis. Ana, which means I, Nafshi, my soul. Savas, in the writing, Yahavis, I'm giving over. And Al Derech says, in a similar way, this is what the Rebbeim did with the Ksavim. So anyhow, with all of this introduction, I don't properly know what the nature of Klippa is and whatever it is. But I do know the 365 mitzvahs, let's say. We're discussing some of them now in Amram. But anyhow, as it is in Sitra Achra, this is also how it is in the 365 mitzvahs, let's say negative commandments that we have in the Torah, things to not do, and also in all of the rabbinic prohibitions. After the fact that they are opposite, as in they oppose the will and the wisdom of Hashem, and they're literally the opposite of it. They are literally separate from the unity and the oneness of Hashem, with the ultimate separation. Similar to how we say about the Sitra Achra, about the other side and the Klippa, which are called Avodah Zarah, and they're called other gods because of the concealment of the divine will, as we explained in the second chapter of this Maimon, which is the last chapter. And also the three garments of the soul, which come from Klippa Snega. There's another Klippa, which is sort of middle Klippa. It's a Klippa, I don't know, maybe if you want to think of a comparison, you could say It's like the pith, I think it's called, in the orange. Yeah, the white stuff. It could kind of go either way. You could take it off, or you could eat it with the orange. It's sort of a middle ground. It could either go to the side of good, or it could go to the side of bad. With the three garments of the soul, which are from Snega in Yidden, Shehem, Machshava Dibur, Ma'aseh, Hamul Bashim, which are the thoughts, speeches, and actions, which are enclosed in the 365 mitzvahs, which from the Torah, or mitzvahs derabanan. I mean, mitzvahs slices say negative commandments, things which you're not allowed to do. The rest are derabanan from the Torah, from the rabbis. And also the soul itself, which is enclosed in the enclothement, which is enclosed in the machshava dibur ma'aseh, and the thought, speech, and actions that a person can do. They are all enclosed, or they're all unified with the other side and the klippah, which is called aveira zara. If a person does an aveira, what they're doing is they're taking their garment and they're pushing it over to the other side. The other side I would describe as being things which are denial of godliness. It doesn't necessarily need to be an aveira per se, but the notion of a side which isn't holy, the notion of something which isn't a divine expression, is the other side. Sitra achra literally translates to the other side. So whenever we say sitra achra, we're meaning the side which isn't holiness. When a person does an aveira, chas v'shalom, and let's say he includes his action in the aveira, which is to say that he does something, and when he's doing something, his body and his soul are all involved in doing this thing, which is on the other side, which is on the other side of holiness. When a person does this thing, he's enclosing himself, and by virtue of that, he's in a sense pulling himself over. He's wearing the uniform, as it were, of sitra achra. He's pulling himself over to that side. And these things are called aveira zara. They're called foreign worship, because in a sense they're something which makes itself to be distinct from godliness. And not only that, but not only this, they're nullified, and they're tuffle. Tuffle means that, like, you have two things. One of them is something, and one of them is, like, I mean, how would I say that? I don't know. You have bread and you have the cream cheese. The cream cheese is tuffle to the bread. You want to eat the bread, the cream cheese comes along with it. So when a person,
unless it's Vegemite, then you just want to eat the Vegemite. The bread comes along.
Stop making fun of me. So something. By the way, that is a concept in halacha.
Really?
Completely a concept in halacha. If you have Vegemite and you're only eating the bread because you want to be able to have the Vegemite, and you don't want to hurt yourself because the Vegemite is too salty, the example given in halacha is a salted fish. That's the kaya. It's called dog maliach. If a person eats a dog maliach that it's really, really salty, and he's eating the bread to not damage himself by virtue of the saltiness of the fish, then he actually does not need to make a bracha on the bread. He doesn't need a bench afterwards.
Wow.
So, I mean, not on the bread. Everything is
so
on the fish.
But you have to have the pure intention of wanting to have...
Yes, and it's very hard to have that pure intention. If I remember correctly, the Kuntreis Umayan writes that you should try to avoid doing this, because who really knows if their intention is literally to not have any bread? How do you know that you're mamish not hungry at all? And by the way, if you're completely not hungry, and you're not having anah, then you shouldn't make a bracha either. It's not considered eating if you're gouging yourself to the point of discomfort. Maybe if you say that it's like you're having pleasure from the taste of it or whatever it is, maybe you should. All of these things are complicated, brachas. But it is a point to be made. But yeah, that's the concept. In that case, the bread would be tuffle to the Vegemite. But when a person does an aveira, he's making himself nullified to it. He's saying that he's both to it, and he's making himself, in a sense, something which is a mitzvah unto itself, but he's drawn after the aveira. But more than that, he's lower than it. He's worse than it, and he's less than it. Because the sitra achra isn't enclosed in a physical body. It doesn't know its master. It doesn't acknowledge the Eibusher and then have the kavanah. It knows its master. It knows the Eibusher exists. It knows about the Eibusher, but it doesn't know its master and then also rebel against it. With what it says, it's quoting from the pasuk, "Mishlachas malachei, sending out its evil, its bad agents. as in it's not doing anything that's outside of what Hashem sent it to do. Uchamayim or Bil'am, as Bil'am said, Bil'am said, I am not able to go against the word of Hashem. I think Bil'am is a very good example of what Klippan Sitra Achra is, because it's a very interesting notion when you have in Torah that you have a guy, mamash a guy, a shans. We say some horrible things Bil'am did in Medrash. There's opinions in the Gemara that he's not zeichet to Elam Haba, etc., etc. And Bil'am was mamash in a sense firmer than most people. And I mean, they can't really blame him because he had nevuah. He knew the Eibush existed much better than most people nowadays do. But you would think that someone that's mamash like on stripping his donkey, that someone like that he would, not respect Hashem so much. But no, he says outright, I'm not able to chas v'shalom. I can't do something against what Hashem tells me. And he tells this to the servants of Balak when he's offered a lot of money and he likes money. He's a guy and he's a shantz. But he says, I can't do something against what Hashem says. He was completely impure. He wanted to destroy the Yidden. That was his netiyah, his natural leaning that he wanted. He wanted to destroy the Yidden so badly. But he said, I can't do anything against what Hashem wants. Even though it's a Avodah Zarah, they call the Eibusher the God of gods. They say that they're an Eibusher. They say that they're a God, they're a power, they're a might, they're a force to be reckoned with. Bil'am can definitely consider himself to be that. But ultimately, Hashem is the God of gods. Hashem is the one that calls all of the shots. However powerful a person might be, they understand that Hashem is infinitely more powerful. I mean, we're talking about a person like Bil'am, or Sitra Achra in general, the things which deny godliness. They're not able to, at all, chas v'shalom, violate the will of Hashem. They know and they recognize that, or they know and they grasp that Hashem is their life force and their sustenance, and that they receive from the side, the part where Hashem is giving them over the shoulder, like we explained before, that Hashem doesn't even want to supply them, but they know that they're getting that chayes from Hashem. They know that they're not beloved by Hashem. They know that they're getting it in a very that they're not the kavanah. They know that they're getting it only in a way of makif. They're getting it in a way that it's surrounding them, but it's distant from them. It's not enclosed in them literally. But they know that that's where they're getting it from. They know that they're getting chayes from Hashem. But the chayes that they nurtured from Hashem is in a way of golus inside of them. It's in a way of exile inside of them. That there is godly life force inside of them. And because they consider themselves to be their own power, because they consider themselves to be something, independent, the godliness that sustains them is an exile in them. But they know all of this. They acknowledge all of this. This is kfira, this is denying Hashem's achdos, His unity, because they consider themselves to be something. But they're not kafir, they're not denying, they're not contradicting the notion of Hashem completely, to say that Hashem isn't something. But rather they just call Him the God of gods. That is to say, their life force and their sustenance, which is drawn to them from Hashem's will. And therefore they never ever violate the will of Hashem. And that's how you can have a person like Bil'am. Bil'am is mamash a Rasha. He did horrible things. He hated the Yidden. He was Sitra Achra. His mamash. The ultimate Rasha in a sense. There's one opinion in the Gemara that Bil'am gets, that Bil'am will be zeichet to Elam Haba. But all the other opinions say even if everyone else that it says in the Mishnah will be getting Elam Haba, Bil'am doesn't get Elam Haba. That's like Bil'am is mamash like the archetypal villain. He's mamash. We say that Bil'am is like the opposite of like Avram Avinu. We say that Bil'am is like the Navi of the nations. That's like equivalent to Moshe. But on the other side, Bil'am mamish was, the archetypal character, and he couldn't violate what Hashem wants. And Sitra Achra can't violate what Hashem wants. We say the Yetzer Hara. There's a mashal given in Zayar that the Yetzer Hara is like a mashal for the Yetzer Hara is like you have a king and he hired a prostitute for a son because he wanted to test his son. He wanted to see if his son would violate. The prostitute is hired by Hashem. The prostitute doesn't want the son to get hurt or anything like that. The prostitute just wants to do what Hashem wants, or what the king wants. And so the prostitute tries to tempt the person, but the prostitute isn't violating what the king wants. Even though if the son would fall to his temptation and he would sleep with the prostitute, ultimately the prostitute wouldn't be violating what Hashem wants, or wouldn't be violating what the king wants, because the prostitute is, just following orders, and that's what the king wants. Even though the king doesn't want his son to do it, and the king will be angry with his son if he does it. But the prostitute isn't violating the will of the king. And this is how it is with the Sitra Achra, this is how it is with the other side, this is how it is with Averis. The thing itself is only doing what Hashem wants, even though they consider themselves to be distinct entities, and this is necessary for the aveira to actually be an aveira. As we explained before, that the notion, the reason why you need to have something which is distinct in a sense is to be able to give the notion of schar and einish. You need to be able to have free will that can actually be, taka proper. But it's not the thing itself, even though its nature is that it considers itself to be distinct, like Kuntreis says, even though the nature is that it needs to feel distinct, nevertheless, it's not trying to violate what Hashem says whatsoever. It's completely just trying to do what Hashem wants. The imkain, and seeing as this is how it is. Aveira if a person violates the law of Hashem, he is much worse and lower, or lesser, than the Sitra Achra and the Klippa, which are called Avodah Zarah and other gods. And he is much lower. He's at the ultimate separation from the oneness and unity of Hashem. And it's as though he is a kafir in the unity of Hashem more than the Sitra Achra. Why? He doesn't say it outright for some reason, but what he's saying, it's obvious from the context that when a person violates what Hashem wants, he's actually violating it. He's taka going ahead and doing something that's negative the will of Hashem. Like in the mashal of the prostitute, the son knows his father doesn't want him to fall to his temptations. If he does it regardless, he's taka violating the will of Hashem. The prostitute isn't doing anything wrong. The prostitute is literally, fulfilling what the king wants. But the son is taka doing something wrong. The son is taka violating the will of Hashem. So when a person does an aveira, they're lower than the source of the aveira. They're lower than the klippa and the sitra achra, etc., etc. Now, by the way, in a sense, you could take chizuk from this, that Hashem loves such a person, even though they're in literally the lowest level. They're lower than sitra achra. They're lower than klippa. But Hashem loves us, and we're able to come back from this. But even while the person is in that low level, Hashem is still giving them chayes, and still cholzeras and leitzar, and galul edom shchinei iman, that Hashem is always with us. But at the same time, it's important for a person to appreciate what it means that even the source of the aveira, even the taivas and whatnot, their sources, they're only trying to do what Hashem wants. And if a person falls for them, if a person goes for it, then they're coming lower than them because they're taka denying it. So, Kitzur, the 365 mitzvahs and the Surim of the Chachamim are separate from the oneness of Hashem, like the Sitra Achra, like the other side, which is called the Avodah Zarah. And therefore, a sinner, his thoughts, speeches, and actions, and his soul in general, they're all enclosed in the Sitra Achra, they're all enclosed in the other side. And he's lower than it because he is denying the oneness of Hashem, because he's saying not only am I my own distinct entity, but I'm able to do something that's completely separate. Any questions?
When he refers to, they call him the God of gods, is he referring, I know that we're obviously talking in context of many things, but is he also referring to potentially Christianity?
What do you mean?
Because Christianity has the theory of the Trinity. So the God of gods, they still believe that God is the God, and then they believe that Yoshke is the Son of God, and I don't really understand the concept of the Holy Spirit.
I don't pretend to be an expert in Christianity. I know that there's many different views. I've looked into, in general, what the thing with this, a lot of nafkamis halacha, like what kind of churches you're allowed to go into if you definitely need to.
Oh, really?
Some of them, some like sects, they say that the notion, I think Lutherans or whatever it is, they say, I could be completely messing that up though, I don't pretend to be an expert in the name or anything like that, but they say that no, it's ludicrous to say that there's something else, and they say that Yoshka is like a prophet, and he's whatever it is, but that he's not, he might be divinely inspired, but he's not divine. But there are some, versions of Christianity where they say that no, there's three distinct entities that make up a unity, and they're talking this thing. This is about what they worship. When he's saying that the klippos and Sitra Achra are called Elakaya, he's not referring to what people say. He's referring to what the actual, the chayas of the thing. You wouldn't say the malach of the thing necessarily, but what the thing represents. And when you have an aveira, I don't know. Let's say you have a piece of chazer, right? A piece of chazer, the aveira that is eating chazer. The notion of an aveira of eating chazer isn't something which denies the oneness of God. In a sense, it actually acknowledges it more than a lot of things. Boxes of tissues doesn't really have any charge to it. It's just a box of tissues. I mean, you could use it to blow your nose, helping you by this Hashem, whatever it is, but it doesn't really have that charge in a sense. The aveira that is eating chazer, not the chazer itself. The chazer itself could have many different applications, but the aveira that is eating chazer, it's taka a bad thing, and it's not as bad. It's not as low as the person that's doing it, because the person that's doing it is lowering himself to deny godliness by saying that he's doing something which is completely against the will of Hashem. But the aveira itself, the nature of the aveira itself, while it is something negative and that is in a sense detracting, it's saying that it's its own force because it is able to accomplish something in the world in a sense. But it's still the nature of the aveira itself acknowledges the existence of God. It knows where it's coming from. It knows what it is, and at the same time, it's saying that I can, cause a person to go to such a low level. I can, in a sense, enforce the denial of the existence of God. But at the same time, the aveira itself points to the notion of an Eibusher. There's a story that there was once a rabbi. I'm probably butchering the story, but there was a rabbi. He was trying to get people to come to his Gemara shir in Eretz Yisrael. He went to a professor, and he said, "Join my shir." The professor said, "No, I'm sorry, I'm not religious." He's like, "So the shir is for non-religious people as well." The professor said, "No, you don't understand. I'm not religious that I eat chazer on Yom Kippur." So he said, "You actually happen to seem to have more faith in God than most religious Jews." So he said, "What do you mean?" So he said, "Well, most religious Jews, they do what they do, but they don't really think about it all the time. But you are so convinced that it matters to the Eibusher that you shouldn't eat chazer, and you're so convinced that it matters to the Eibusher that you shouldn't eat on Yom Kippur, you go out and you do these things, and by doing these things, you're acknowledging that you believe in the mitzvah so much more. You might say that you have." This was sometime after the Holocaust, and he was, I believe, a survivor. So he said you might have your problems with God, but you definitely acknowledge His existence and His mitzvahs. And this is how it is. The notion of a mitzvah, of something not to do, even while a person is doing it, points directly to the Eibusher. The notion of its negativity, but it still points to the Eibusher. And that's why it's called Elakaya. It's not necessarily about the belief of the people that they have a certain religion or whatever it is. It's referring more to the Sitra Achra, to the other things. If a person believes in something that's not the Eibush or whatever, it's possible that they can be denied. I mean, if a person serves a Avodah Zarah, even if they acknowledge the Eibush, what they're doing in a sense is they're saying that there's something completely distinct from it, and they're denying the will of the Eibush. They're violating the will of the Eibush. As much as if they're, eating chazer per se. It's not about what a person is acknowledging as much as what they're including themselves and what they're doing. It's not possible for a person to worship two entities at once. It's always distinct in a sense. And this is why, I already went over. This is why when Eliyahu Hanavi told the Yidden by the prophets of the Baal, he said, pick a side, because you can't be on both sides. One explanation of it is that when you're serving the Eibusher, it needs to be serving the Eibusher. If you're serving something else with it, it's not serving the Eibusher in that sense. But we could talk about this more, but at this point we're already over.